Just setting up. Good to go.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Hi, for coming. So we're hosting the Women's Conference today with the RSU. Please forgive me for any kind of technical errors. I'm kind of new to virtual conferencing, but here we are. So I hope you guys have fun and I hope you learn something. And it's been really exciting sort of making this conference happen. So here we are. It's been really great collaboration with everyone involved. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it basically. So kind of just to run through what's going on in this session. I'm Sabiha, I'm the Gender Equality Officer with the RSU, and I'm hosting this for you guys. And we're also going to have Maria Purcell. Maria is a woman that I've been working with for this year on my final year project. She works at Facebook, but she also has a Kickstarter called We Are the Hood, which is to do with feminine health. So she's going to be coming along in a little while to speak to us about careers in the tech agency and kind of the future of femtech. We've got Farah talking about period poverty and the kind of campaigns that have been going on with the RSU. Mars is going to be coming along to talk about gender and menstruation, and Mars is the trans officer in the RSU. And we've got Danielle joining us to talk about sport and women in Roehampton. Sport Roehampton. Said that the wrong way around, sorry. Okay. Next one. So why are we here? So International Women's Day is today, 8th of March. So woohoo! Thank you everyone for being here and celebrating it with us. So that's really exciting. But what we are celebrating is the social, economic and political progress of women around the world. Sorry. Doing Zoom and a presentation does not work. So yeah, we're celebrating women everywhere. We're raising awareness around gender equality. We're lobbying for change, and we're here to help and uplift each other, raising women's visibility. This was just a quote that I came across, which I really liked. The story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist nor to any one organization, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights. And I kind of felt, in the process of making this conference and coming across all these women at Roehampton, individuals at Roehampton, it really wasn't about me making this presentation. It was more about learning about all the wonderful work that goes into Roehampton and how many strong people there are out there who are making an effort. So really it's a celebration to everyone. So thank you to all of those who have been involved. International Women's Day has been around for over 100 years, which is really not long enough, because come on, how long have women been around for? But according to the World Economic Forum, none of us are likely to see gender parity in our lifelines, and neither will our children and future children, which is just insane, that we're in a world, I don't know, we're in the UK. I always feel like we're in a bubble where we live in a well-developed country. We have access to all these opportunities. So to read a statistic like that and then go, oh my God, how is that happening? So it's really important for all of us to be here and to be using our voices and be making a change. So, so let's try and make that come sooner, basically. So to talk about all the things that are International Women's Day, everything to do with women would be virtually impossible. So as the Gender Equality Officer, I'm here to kind of talk about my own experiences, some of the things that I've learned, what I've been up to, and kind of help you guys. Maybe we can have a bit of a discussion with everyone who's speaking, or even if you're just here to listen today, to be able to learn through our shared experiences and come together. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to that. I know we've got some amazing people coming along here, so thank you. So to talk a bit about myself, this is me. I am female. I had 3 sisters, a mum. I've always had, I had a lot of female teachers, female friends. I was pretty close to my mum growing up, but the one thing we really didn't talk about was periods. Awkward story. When I got my first period, I came home and I told my mom, like, Mom, I got my period. And every single day she had hugged me until that point. But then one day I came home and I said this to her and she was just like, you know what to do. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I know what to do. And that was it, you know, she turned around and walked off into the kitchen. So it's just this really awkward thing. But I mean, that was my own story of my first period. I'm sure you guys all have incredible stories. They're always great to, you know, have a drink and catch up over. You'll be laughing your head off. But the point is that at that time when I was going through that stage, it wasn't something that was really talked about. And I think a lot of young girls, they kind of get to the point where they get their period and then it's, oh my God, I've got my period. But there's 800 million menstruators around the world. And so it's a thing that we should talk about, make our lives a bit easier. We're all talking about it behind the scenes. So I think it's time to be a bit more vocal about it, basically. I hope this is all flowing well. So period poverty, to kind of where it all starts and where it starts becoming a difficult topic, I guess the start of that point is period poverty. Now, Farah is going to be talking about period poverty as well later on, but to kind of, I wanted to really talk about kind of where some work is and where period poverty can be illustrated in a sort of different way. So this year, as I mentioned, I was working with Maria with her company, The Hood, and it's all to do with feminine health and get young girls talking about their health and how they can use tools to be able to better understand their cycles rather than feeling like that it's just something they have to deal with. Because I think that's generally the perspective that women assume, that our periods are just something we have to deal with. So I did this piece of work and I wanted to share it with you guys because it's to do with, it's like a different perspective on period poverty, highlighting it in a different way. So I think there's some, like if you try and think about it in a different way of telling a story, a narrative. So anyway, I'll just get to sharing it with you. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna have to change screens, forgive me. Nope, it really doesn't want to go. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I should have had this open. Forgive me. Okay. So, okay, I have it now. So this is the storytelling piece that I made. I guess I'll just run through it and then you guys will kind of catch on with what it is. So this is where the story begins, as an egg, a little ball of cells that makes you you. You learn to see, to speak, to feel, to walk. You grow up and experience the world around you. You go to nursery, you make friends, you have play dates, you choose your likes and dislikes. You begin to feel things. You begin to try and understand yourself and your emotions. So this is a hypertext, and so you click through to get through to the next bit. So you're 13, it's cold outside, you're on your daily walk to school, it's such a sluggish day. The muscles in your legs are feeling tight and an impending headache is hindering your ability to think. It hurts. Why does it hurt? You arrive at the gates, and there is enough time to pop to the loo before the bell, and there it is, bloody hell. No, not today. Okay, you're at school. Where do you get a pad? This is so embarrassing. Who do you talk to? No. Can't think about anything. Don't panic. This is a nightmare. You're going to fail the math test and you have gym class. Everyone will know. Think. Don't panic. What do you do? So now you have a choice. So maybe if anyone wants to pitch in. So what are the options to hold the blood? One of your socks, a piece of folded paper, a plastic bag to hold it. What if it drips? Toilet tissue, if there is any. These are your choices. They don't feel much like choices. So does anyone want to go ahead and make a choice? Anyone? I'm going to pick on someone. Helena, help me.
Shall I go?
Yeah?
I'll say toilet tissue if there is any.
Toilet tissue. Okay. There isn't enough, but it might hold. Carefully shape it into a makeshift pad. You pray it doesn't leak. If anyone saw that, you would shrink to feel like the most insignificant speck in the world that you don't want to exist in. This is going to have to work. Now rush back to class before anyone asks any questions. This kind of goes on for, it will take about 10 minutes, so I won't go through the whole thing, but you get the point. There's like different points in the story where you can make choices. So if I just kind of skim through, there's a maths test, and it's like kind of being the center of attention and having to deal with period, like the fact that you've got your period and you've got now a gym class, and how you're going to get through your day, and kind of all the anxieties you would face if you can't manage your period. So this is kind of the story of a girl. It was really an amalgamation of different experiences that I've heard from friends and gone through myself. And definitely when I've sat like one-to-one and showed this to someone, they're laughing their head off by the end of it, reminiscing about an experience that they had in high school. And it's, you kind of, as a female, you are sort of made to feel like this is what to expect, this is the norm, whereas it's not the norm, and it shouldn't be that way. And the kind of stigma that's sort of attached to the conversation around menstruation really shouldn't be the way it is, but we are made to feel like it is the norm. So this story was really to highlight that sometimes, there's a lot of activists out there who are working in this sort of work, but the reason I created like this illustrated digital story was because I felt that trying to portray the same topic in a different way might reach a wider audience, and that's why I've kind of made this. So as I said, then it goes into kind of some information if you wanted about where you might be able to get help, or how you can help others, or just kind of more information on the topic should you want to read it. So anyway, that was the story that I made. Now, sorry, just going back to the way it was. It's really difficult to time these things because you don't know how long. I'm sorry. I'm saying sorry. Okay, so at this point, Maria should join us, but I kind of went a bit faster. She is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. Let me just make sure that it's happening. It's happening. Okay, so she will be joining us very shortly. I guess we can have a conversation around this to fill in a few minutes, if that's okay. Helena, help me. So yeah, I made this story piece, and I know Farah's been working a lot on period poverty, which has been incredible, the kind of work she's been doing. Farah, would you like to, maybe we can go to Farah before we go to Maria. Shall we do that?
I'm happy to do that if you want.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me just take it to your slide.
Cool.
There we go. Okay, Farah's now going to talk to us about her period poverty campaign. Go for it.
Thanks, Sabiha. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Farah. I'm the president of the RSU. So yeah, let's go talk about period poverty campaign that I've done this year. So for like a little context, I was the gender equality officer last year. So this is super bizarre for me now to be on like this side of it. And this is kind of the period poverty thing kind of stemmed from wanting to put free sanitary pads in the library, which is an idea I had when I was gender equality officer, but I think at the time I didn't really feel like I had the time to really dedicate to making that happen or the resources, but now I do because it's my job. So for starters, what is period poverty? I think Sabiha covered it really well. But yeah, there's like actual impacts that it has in the UK and worldwide. I think the UK was where I wanted to focus mostly because it was kind of the main reason behind wanting to put free sanitary pads in the library to affect the students that we actually have here. So for anybody who saw the campaign, when I launched the sanitary pads in the library, there were posters in the foyer of the library. And I've got a bunch of stats from Bodyform UK. All of their sources are like on their website in like a bibliography. But I got a bunch of stats from there and then I modified the language a little just to make it gender neutral. It was very important to me the whole time that I did this to recognize that it's not just women that have periods and to try and make it as gender inclusive as possible. So some of those stats were 1 in 10 between the ages of 14 to 21 who have periods can't afford to buy sanitary products, while 1 in 7 have struggled to afford them. 46% have missed an entire school day because of their period. 59% have made up a lie or alternative excuse to avoid going to school. 50% were embarrassed by their period. Many were afraid to ask for help because of the stigma. 68% said they were less able to pay attention in class while school or college whilst menstruating. Over the course of a year, 137,700 students in the UK missed school because of period poverty. Stigma surrounding periods has been shown to directly affect students' potential to succeed. If a pupil misses school every time they have their period, they are set 145 days behind their fellow students. And 37% of the nation, plus 56% of 18 to 24-year-olds have had to go without sanitary products or cut down on them due to lack of funds. There was a couple more as well, but I don't want to go on for too long. They're all on my Instagram page because I made them into little squares. So that's kind of like an idea behind what motivated this. The idea that people between the ages of like 18 to 25 in particular in this country can be so detrimentally affected by something that seems relatively simple. Like, not only is it shocking to think that so many people can't afford sanitary products, but it's also shameful to think of how much money we have to pay for them anyway when they're a necessity. And also part of this as well, between why I wanted to do this and what period poverty is for me, it didn't just represent like not being able to afford sanitary products. It kind of represented the fact that we don't talk about periods nearly as much as we should, like Sabiha touched on brilliantly. The idea of putting sanitary products, running this campaign in the library felt like a bigger reminder of like, this is something that most women and many trans men have to go through. And it's ridiculous that we don't talk about it, and it impacts everybody. In fact, everyone who has a period has to go through this for 1 week of every month for so many years of their life, and we just not talking about that. And if it's going to have a detrimental impact on people's abilities to succeed, we shouldn't just not talk about it. That's insane. So why it matters to Roehampton specifically, because lots of the stats they heard there, they're specific to people who are 18 to 24 years old. That's the demographic of people that are most likely to be at the university. But especially at Roehampton, on average, approximately, our student demographic is about 70% female. So we can assume that roughly around 70% of the student population are having periods. We are also at Roehampton, our university has one of the highest intakes of students who are the first in their family to go to university, which means we have a higher than average number of students who come from low income backgrounds who are going to be the most likely to be impacted by poverty. And then if they need sanitary products, period poverty as well. But it doesn't just affect people who have periods, it affects everybody on the whole. if 70% of our student population are being impacted by menstruating and they're struggling to focus, or they're struggling with the shame of periods, or they're struggling with sanitary products, that affects the university population, it affects the quality of the university and its reputation, and it affects our academic success if women are being held back. So how does the Period Poverty Project work? I used some of my a little pot of funding that I get as RSU president, and I used a little bit of it to get some baskets that got put in all of the toilet cubicles in the library. The reason I went for the library is because it's one place that everybody can recognize. It's relatively accessible from all corners of the college, but also all of the toilets are gender neutral and they're individual cubicles. And there's also like a nice little surface next to the sink that the basket fits on really nicely. So it just seemed like a logical place to put them all. And I put a bunch of sanitary pads in them. And now we've got a big set box of sanitary pads at the RSU. And then worked with the university, and eventually they agreed to increase the RSU's funding every year by £300, which gets ring fenced to specifically fund this project. And now that money means that I'm able to expand it to Whitelands, which I've started doing. So I recently counted all the toilets in Whitelands, which was about as exciting as you can as you think it is. And then did run into a slight problem that the toilets there aren't gender neutral in the way that they are in the library. So I worked with Mars, who you're going to meet a little bit, to decide that like it is still important that sanitary pads need to be put in the cubicles in men's toilets. So then I worked with Whitelands College, and they have agreed to buy sanitary pad bins to put into the cubicles in the men's toilets, so that we can put sanitary pads in there for trans men. And also just because it shocked me that men's toilets don't have bins in them. Might, as a nice little side effect, make the men's toilets a little bit nicer as well. So now we're looking to get all of the sanitary pads ordered to fill the baskets and put them in Whitelands. And then the next step is figuring out whose job is going to be, other than mine, to restock all of the baskets once I stop being RSU president. So next week, I'm thinking next Tuesday at about 12 till 1, I'll put more on my Instagram page, so keep a lookout soon. I'm going to open up a Zoom call for anybody who wants to be a volunteer for the Period Poverty Project. If anybody has some time, just a couple of hours now and again, to go distribute the sanitary pads around the library in Whitelands. And even if not, I'm also thinking if we get some people together and people are interested in this, we can run campaigns together around gender equality and reducing stigma and shame around periods, and whatever else people have an interest in, really. I'm just keen to get people together if anyone's interested. And also don't worry if you're not near campus. Cool, thanks. Anybody who's interested, we can do a lot of campaigning online while it's COVID. I think that's everything from me. I'll take any questions if you want.
Yeah, Farah, I just wanted to say about the women's toilet having bins, and what you said about like made me chuckle. What you said about reconsidering your appreciation of women's toilet, and that's a fairly common joke amongst trans men, actually. That if we're willing to go through men's toilet, it must be we really are men, because honestly, not ideal. Not ideal. And the amount of times, like I've told you, the amount of times that I've had to sort of like, wrap a pad or a tampon in like amounts of toilet paper to hide it, to find the closest bin, because nowhere near the men's toilet was there a bin, has honestly been embarrassing. It's just so much.
Yeah, it's just, I can't, honestly, massive salute to you as well, because I had to go into the men's toilets just to go count how many cubicles there were. And when I say I went into the men's toilets, I mean, I stuck my head through the door and I went 2 and then left, because I didn't want to go in there too deep. So big salute to that. But also, like, it's exactly that, the fact that you have to wrap up a sanitary product because there's not something as simple as a bin. A bin should be obvious, and it's just a case of people don't get listened to when they're not cis men. And also, like, I know plenty of women have had to do some very awkward and uncomfortable things to cope with periods when we don't have sanitary pads. It's just such a simple thing to think about, like, how uncomfortable and difficult that is. I couldn't imagine then having to try and shove it in my pocket and having to go down the hallway just for a bin. It's a bin.
Well, thank you so much, Farah, for that. I do definitely want to come back to you for conversation, but this being a virtual conference, I'm just going to have to jiggle some things around. So if it's okay, right now we're going to jump through to Maria, and then we'll come back to this conversation. Is that okay? Lovely. Thank you so much. I think Maria is on.
I am. Not sure if you can hear me.
Let me change the screen. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Fabulous.
Shall we?
Oh, my face is so close to the screen. I'm just going to back it up a little bit. Did not expect.
Would you prefer to go back to the presentation so the presentation screen is up?
Ah, yeah, that would be good. Thank you. Then I won't just ramble on, because you know me. I love the sound of my own voice.
Oh, we love the sound of your voice too. Okay, you're on. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a really busy schedule, but it's awesome that you can be here. So I'll pass over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's actually something that's pretty close to my heart as well, because I used to run my students' union when I was at university many years ago. But when I was at university, I ran quite a few events similar to this. So it's just fabulous. So I'm Maria Purcell. I lead commercial partnerships for Europe, Middle East and Africa at Facebook in a small-ish department called Workplace, which is one of the newer products by Facebook. And it's not the sexiest, I'm going to be honest with you, but it's definitely one of the fastest growing. So I work in that team. It's best to think of us as like the dark arts of Facebook, the stuff that people don't really know Facebook does behind the scenes. And so by night, or when I'm not working in Facebook, I am also the co-founder of The Hood. And The Hood essentially is a company that started 1 year ago today. Actually, today is our anniversary. We launched via a Kickstarter on International Women's Day just before the pandemic hit, which was brilliant. By the way, if anyone's ever thinking of doing a Kickstarter, don't do it. It's horrendous and really difficult. And also, don't do it when you're 3 months postpartum, and also don't do it just ahead of a global pandemic, because it may lead you to a nervous breakdown. But we ran a Kickstarter campaign for The Hood to essentially launch our journals, which our first journal that we launched is called Girlhood, and it is all about kind of just following on from the topic that you guys are talking about today, all about educating and helping support young girls at the beginning of their journey into womanhood. So everything to do with their menstrual cycles, with their reproductive health, and generally just a lot about confidence. It started off with my niece. She was 9 years old and she got her first period. And actually 9 is, super young, but it's actually increasingly more common that girls are getting their periods younger and younger. I think about when I first came on my period, and I was, I think I was 14 or something, and I wanted to go watch 101 Dalmatians at the cinema. And I didn't want to tell my mom because I didn't want her to not take me to the cinema because I know she'd make a big deal out of it. But, that was about as deep as it got for me. But as a 9-year-old, I couldn't imagine all of the things that my niece must have been going through. And I like to think I'm a pretty cool aunt, maybe not the coolest one of the 3 that she has, but I'm pretty badass. So I thought, let me try and make something for her. Let me try and find something, and just I'll leave it up to you, but have a go at Googling first period presents, and it's pretty horrendous what comes back on Google search. I definitely didn't want to throw her a period party with a big period cake. I didn't think she'd like that. Or have a period summer party. Didn't think she'd like that either. So I decided I was gonna make a journal for her, make something that she could color in, doodle. She loves anime and drawing, and she's a bit of a gamer. So I thought, well, yeah, cool, let's do something that will kind of pull out her creativity. And from that, it just kind of snowballed, and we had a few celebrities and a few kind of well-known publishing people who were interested in contributing, but also of getting one for their own daughter. So we had the Kickstarter in March, International Women's Day 2020. And yeah, from then on, we've managed to sell over 600 of these journals now and launch Sisterhood, which actually is for basically all the women that bought Girlhood for their daughters or their, teenagers, and just said, look, I'd love something for myself to track my own periods, understand my own body, and really just get to grips of, my hormones and what that means for me as a kind of a grown woman. So we launched at the end of the year. So yes, by day, technology, growth partnerships, and by night, kind of period author vigilante. I don't know how to describe it essentially, but yeah, as you're aware, the hood kind of nods to girlhood, womanhood, and hopefully we'll be looking at some things like motherhood and sorry, girlhood, sisterhood, and we'll be looking at womanhood and motherhood hopefully later on this year. So that's a bit about me. I thought I would probably talk to you about these 3 questions that we had here, or these 3 topics. So how do you get ready for a job that does not exist? Wow, okay. Facebook actually wasn't a platform when I was graduating university. So I did my advertising and media degree when I was at the University of Lincoln, and I graduated, and my dad, the day I graduated, I called my dad, my Nigerian dad, and he said, fabulous, can you do a master's with that grade? And I was like, I don't know. He was like, great, call me back when you're going to do your master's. So then I ended up staying on at university, and I kind of doubled down onto design. But at that time, really from an internet point of view, all we had was High Five. If anybody remembers High Five, probably no one. MySpace and Foursquare. I think that was probably about it. And I was pretty happy with my MySpace profile. And my best friend was like, you should join this new thing called Facebook. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm good with MySpace. That's all I need. So I didn't even think it was a proper platform, let alone think you could get a job there and work in that field. And we didn't have any digital modules or anything like that. None of the cool stuff that I know Sabiha and the folks are getting up to. Definitely weren't working in virtual reality, that's for sure. So how did I navigate into an industry that actually didn't exist? When I know everybody, when you're at the degree level, you have a plan, everyone's got a plan of where they want to be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But how do you do that when the job that you may end up in doesn't actually exist yet? And there are a few, I thought I would just kind of go quickly over a few guiding principles that has helped me navigate in an industry that is extremely fast moving, but also just very ambiguous and turbulent when it comes to, well, just everything. When it comes to everything, really. So the first is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's probably the best advice. So I'll start with that. I don't think on any given day in my job, I feel like I know 100% what I'm doing. There's always something new. There's always something different. There's always something that, crops up out of nowhere. And when you start to master that, okay, I don't know what I'm doing 100%, but I'm going to start pulling the thread, or I'm just going to lean into that uncomfortable feeling. That's really when you start to make progress. I have a lot of people that join Facebook. I was at Uber for a while as well, which is even crazier. And a lot of people who want structure and they want like that grid of what they need to do really struggle, even if they've come from the best universities and have had the best like education that money can buy. They really do struggle. So getting used to being uncomfortable and being in that kind of stretch zone. The stretch zone is something I kind of think of as between, comfort and panic. Is stretch. Very fine line between stretch and panic or stretch and chaos, but really operating and dipping into that stretch zone on a daily basis in tech is something that will keep you going and keep you finding out those new opportunities. The second is to always be curious. One of the things that Uber, they had when I worked at Uber was always be learning was one of the kind of mission statements. And I absolutely love that because I'm just a naturally curious person. And a challenging person as well. I was like, as I was listening to the previous speaker talk about, why do we have to pay for these and why aren't they free? I was like, yeah, my mic was off. I was just like whooping in the background. And my co-founder like says that we're like kind of like Martin and Malcolm. She's very like diplomatic and quiet and knows what she wants, and I'm like Malcolm, I want to burn the place down and anarchy and challenge, but we're a good mix together. But to be curious and to question always is something that just leads to more answers, and with answers leads to more knowledge. So if you're constantly, not like an argumentative or a complete anarchist way, but if you're constantly just not accepting the status quo, it does lead you to operate more in that stretch zone than you would usually. So always be curious. And when it comes to networking, I get this a lot from a networking point of view as well, finding mentors or, you know, just getting out there and knowing people. You know, being curious has pretty much got me where I've got to today, because I just want to meet people. I want to learn about them, how they got there. I want to hear their stories. So being curious ultimately leads to listening. And I love the sound of my own voice, love talking. Sabiha will tell you I leave voice notes all the time. I hardly ever text. I'm a voice notes person, just because I find it easier to articulate myself verbally than writing things down. I'm a terrible writer. But to listen more than you talk is something that will get you so much further than how smart you are on a topic. To actually listen, I always aim to be the person in the room that when somebody is talking, I will be silent for as long as I can and then ask just one very important or intelligent question rather than talking for the sake of talking. Doesn't always work, but that's what I try and do, because the more I listen, the more I learn and the more curious I get, and the better that leads to the end result. So that would be my other. So far we have had, you know, always be learning, be curious, and get comfortable being uncomfortable. And the last thing before I move on to the ever-growing field of femtech, I guess you're starting to see why I'm interested now in that industry. But I think the last thing as well that I definitely want to make sure that we kind of cover off today. Yes, you always have to be pushing, you always have to be curious, you always have to be open. But in order to navigate your career and really be the owner of what's happening in your industry that's always changing, you also need to know when to step back and when to stop, because burnout is real. I'm sure many of you being students, especially in a pandemic, especially if you're in your final year or anything like that, you know that always on stress and that panic that can lead to. And sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. Is to say, okay, what's the worst that happens if I don't move at 100 miles per hour? What's the worst if I don't, you know, go 110%? And sometimes it actually just leaves you with that space to really step back and see what's going on, rather than just constantly being in react mode. And that's probably the hardest one of all of them, and it's the one I struggle with the most. Obviously, I have 2 children as well, so doing nothing is pretty hard to not always be doing something, but allowing yourself that time and that stillness does really, really help, which I guess is covered off in that doing it all title that you put in there. So the ever-growing field of femtech, whew, that is a big topic. I think, to be honest, the femtech industry is super interesting, because it's really starting to, anything in tech, any kind of health tech is really marrying that bits and atoms, right? So real people with technology, then that's just super interesting. It can be something very simple, like your Apple Watch, which just tells you, you know, your heartbeat, or tells you, you know, when you need to stand up or things like that, all the way down to real like individual diagnostic medicine that can work with someone's genomes or their different genes or their physical makeup. And I think it health tech spans such a wide spectrum of as an industry, and femtech within that is also just huge. It's something that when we were looking at stuff that we were doing with the Hood, our initial research was just most of femtech deals with fertility. When you look at femtech, I actually hate the word femtech, but that's what it's called. But most of the industry is related to giving birth, or trying to give birth, or not wanting to give birth, or trying to stop being pregnant. That's pretty much it. And there is so much more to what it means to be to be a woman and to know about all the things that make you who you are than just a baby making machine. And you know, it was something I'd always noticed. Like I use the Clue app, which I love, the Clue app, but if I'm not trying to get pregnant, it's not as relevant to me. Or if I really don't care. It seems like that's all that it focuses on, which for my niece, when I was thinking of what could help her, she's 9 years old. Like I don't want to talk, I don't want to talking and thinking about when she could get pregnant, when she can't get pregnant. We haven't even had that conversation yet. So even for you know, young teens starting off in their life to learn about their bodies, to go straight into pregnancy is, I think, such a big leap. And it's something that the whole industry was focused on. And now you're really starting to see like the menopause being spoken about, and that solutions coming out from that, whether it's wearables or whether it's technology or whether it is, you know, more literature and things like that. Facebook actually announced a menopause policy at work on Friday, where we have, you know, pregnancy leave and things like that, but actually now they have a policy around menopause, which is amazing, because again, it is just something nobody really talks about. And you know, it really does affect every woman that goes through that part of her life. It really does affect them. So menopause is coming into the fray, and then so much stuff around menstrual health, whether it be apps, which most of it is focusing on, all the way through to, you know, actually using menstrual blood as a diagnostic tool for, you know, disease biomarkers and things like that. So I think we're going to see more of that come in. And my hope is that it will start to work on more of the issues such as, you know, endometriosis and things like that, that really actually can affect someone's quality of life when it comes to their menstrual health and their hormonal health. I'd love to see more kind of preventative measures coming into that field. But it's definitely something I think we need. It comes right back to gender equality, right? Because this is where we need more women in this field. We need more women starting these companies and more women engineers building products for it. Otherwise, we run the risk of these experiences being dictated from, you know, the male gaze, or using like data that is just, you know, male specific rather than you know, being specifically about, you know, women's experiences, different age groups of women's. So we need to make sure that because we're starting to see more progress in that area, you are seeing more progress in this industry specifically. But my goal is that femtech actually just becomes health tech. It doesn't actually have its own category. It's not like the pink version of technology. My goal, what I would love to see is that it's just health. Regardless of if it's feminine health, which is a horrible term, or not. But I think we're moving to it. It's going to take us a while, but I think we're getting there. Cool. And last but not least, doing it all. This is a hard topic.
I threw that one in for you because I think you are doing it all. You've got a business on the side, you've got your full-time job, you've got children, you've got your partner, you know, you've got so many things you're juggling. So it's kind of asking you, how do you manage? What do you do daily to make sure all the plates stay balancing?
Okay, so this title should probably be how not to lose it. How not to lose your mind. So okay, cool. I think yeah, I think it kind of goes back to that being curious and you know, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think once you have that resiliency, or you build that resilience muscle, your bandwidth just becomes bigger. The more you operate in your stretch zone, the stretchier you become. Without sounding a bit too weird. I used to be a gymnast as well, so I don't know if maybe that's why I'm just focused on the stretchiness. But the more, if you think like yoga or something, if you stretch every day, you're going to become more flexible. And it's the same way about how you push yourself, whether it comes to personal life or work. The more you operate in that stretch zone, the kind of more capacity you have. But I would say realistically, a lot of the stuff you just mentioned there, like the business on the side, career, my partner, children, none of it is done by myself. Like nothing. Not one thing that you mentioned there am I like, I'm just doing it all. The hood wouldn't have become the hood if I didn't find my co-founder Amone. It was actually one of the biggest hurdles for me. I was like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And I couldn't think of how to do it. And I just started talking to my friend Amone, and I was talking to her about it. And she was like, Maria, I love this. I want in. And it turns out that Amone we are very good friends, but she's complete opposite to me when it comes to how we approach things. So actually it meant that we could increase that scope. And with my partner and our children, like he is as equal a dad to them as I am a mother to them. So, you know, we both do school pickup. We both cook dinner, although I try to cook dinner more because I'm a better cook, and he like has like carrots and vegetables with no sauce. It's bad. But you know, I do DIY around the house. So does he. Like, so we just split it in half. We do everything equally, or sometimes even more him than me, to be honest, because I'm pretty lazy when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I think it's about going together, doing things together. And the more you can find your kind of unit, your people around you that you can bounce ideas off of, or or delegate and they can help you, or they can kind of show you how to do things easier, the better. And yeah, I would say that's probably it. I am consciously trying to do less, and kind of hone my focus. But I guess I can end actually last point on something. I was just talking to one of my mentees over the weekend about this. And when you're trying to do more projects, or you're trying to find stretch assignments or things that will get you to that next level, try to keep them all in the same theme or the same area, because then you're actually hitting many things at once. So rather than saying, I'm going to do 5 projects all in these different areas, think of like, okay, what's the one overarching theme? And all of these projects will actually help me get there, because then you're not out from scratch every single time. And I mean, I'm kind of like later on in my career now, but I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm bad at. I know what I, love doing and what really takes the energy out of me. So it's easy to do a lot of stuff when you really like doing it. If you don't like doing it, you really are going to struggle. So that would be my other thing, is lean into your strengths and try to align things to themes and buckets, because then you can really have a one-to-many approach, rather than just project after project after project after project, essentially. And that's it.
Wonderful. I think I'm
cram
going
it all
to
in.
become Elastigirl after this.
Elastigirl, be elastic.
No, that's fantastic advice, and I could not ask for a better mentor. So thank you for everything, and thank you for coming here today. I would hate for anyone to miss the opportunity to ask a question. I don't know if there are any questions.
I just wanted to thank you, Maria. I just wanted to thank you for what you said about like the field of femtech, like the terminology used around it. Because as a trans man, like I have 1,000 stories about like how the terminology used around periods makes me uncomfortable and makes me not engage with it, which in turn can really affect one's health when one starts ignoring it. So the path towards, like not having this pink separate side of health that's feminine is just something that is so important. I just want to thank you with that.
No, for sure. And I think, you know what it is, like my niece she's not a girly girl. Like like I said, and to be honest, actually, she was very similar to me when I was that age. So it just felt so weird when I was looking at these things for her. None of it really fit. Not because she's not a girl. She identifies as a girl, but she just doesn't identify as that kind of pink flowers, like feminine. Like she just doesn't identify with it. So for me, it just never really sat right. And yeah, there is so much and for me as well to learn and acknowledge in terms of, your menstrual or hormonal health is not anything to do with your gender. Like it's completely separate. And I think we're getting there, but just labels on tampons or labels on, sanitary towels, boxes and toilets, all of that kind of stuff. It's just small little micro, not aggressions, but defaults that really chip away at that. So yeah, the more, and if you ever see anything that we are doing on the hood, please do let me know, because it's something that we're just trying to learn more about and know better about. So you can always slide into the DMs and just be like, hey, fix that. That's not right. I do it to other people all the time.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, talking about periods and kind of about your niece and how, you know, you wanted to sort of celebrate it. I feel like there's such a big difference between there's either you're gonna either have the stigma attached to it and it's a really negative thing, or you're gonna go in really hard and celebrate it. Like, kind of, where's the middle ground? Is there a middle ground?
Yeah, I to be honest, I have no idea, because that's like, if I look back to when I was, you know, a teen, I didn't want to fuss. I absolutely didn't. I was fine. I was like, oh man, you know, but I didn't want to fuss. If my mom had like dressed us in red and threw a party and made us howl at the moon, I would have been mortified, and it probably would have set my relationship back with her very far. But some people have that relationship with their daughters or their, you know, goddaughters or nieces or whatever, like, so it's fine. But I wanted to lead more on a, you know, welcome to the next stage message. And there's a lot to learn and there's lots of questions. And here's just a chilled but informative way of doing that. Like, it's cool. It is a big deal, but not because it's something that's happened to you, it's because it's something that you've arrived at. And so kind of start that discovery, because I think for me, when I was that age, and a lot of when we did our research groups, a lot was when we were asking them about, how do you feel about your period? How do you feel about this? A lot of them were talking about products, or they were talking about getting pregnant. That was it. And I thought that was super, super sad that that was the focus, when your body is amazing. And having been pregnant and having gone through pregnancies and miscarriages and all of that kind of stuff, like, you really do understand, like, wow, my brain is not in control. There is a whole heap of chemicals and everything going on in my biology that makes me like completely different. And I don't think we should be waiting until we get to bad moments to have that conversation, because then it will always be sat in stigma if we only ever talk about it when something has happened or something goes wrong. It will always feel like it's a punishment, or you know, it's something to be ashamed about. So yeah, that's why. But I think it massively just depends. I'm definitely more Earth Mother than I was before I started this project, I'll tell you that. But it's still not the route for me, I think, to celebrate in such a way. But I mean, for some people it is. So yeah, just as long as we're talking about it, then I'm happy, to be honest.
Well, I've got later on, I'll be mentioning the hood actually, and the journals, and how you can sort of start cycle tracking to, you know, just embrace your womanhood sort of thing. But thank you so much, Maria, for coming on.
No problem.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good rest of the event. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So we are now going to jump back on with Farah. I'm so sorry, Farah, for the kind of to and fro, guys, but we're back on. Okay. So we were talking about your period poverty campaign, and kind of, I guess, carrying on from Maria's talk as well, about kind of the conversation around periods, and kind of how the conversation around being a woman as well. Just kind of your views on that. Maybe we could just jump back on.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of covered the project, but if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, anyone? Sorry, I get that this was a bit of a chop and change. Just give everyone a minute on the chat, maybe, if anyone wants to say anything. Well, if they do, then we'll keep an eye on that. So we were going to go into, next up we have Mars to speak about gender and menstruation. Mars, I will hand over to you.
Yeah, I actually have my own PowerPoint, if that's okay. Can I share my screen?
Yes, Helena, can you help
Yeah,
me?
I'll just try and make Mars a co-host, and then hopefully.
Should I?
I think there's just a setting for like letting participants share the screens. I think I can. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try, and then if it doesn't work.
I'll stop sharing for a second.
Oh yeah,
Is
there
it
you go.
working?
We can see it.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, I wanted to thank you for having me here. It's honestly an honor to be here with so many amazing women, especially as not a woman. And I wanted to talk a bit about something that's been already touched upon, about how periods don't equal gender, and this is a very basic fact of like understanding trans issues. Not all women have periods, and people of all genders have periods, and the equating of womanhood with periods is actually quite a transphobic argument that, especially in this country, has been used a lot by transphobic movements that are trying to mask it as a feminist issue. So this is why I think it's important to talk about it. And it's important to talk about menstruation, like Farah was saying, because trans people aren't trying to erase the conversation about periods, which is a lie that is often, shared. And this is why, because many women don't have periods, and that includes trans women, definitely, but it also includes some intersex women, and it includes women who are under some medical treatments or who have medical conditions, who have had a hysterectomy. And it also includes women in menopause. So this is a vast range of different experiences of womanhood that are completely unrelated with periods. And on the other hand, many people who aren't women have periods. So that includes trans men, that includes some non-binary people, and that includes some intersex people. And so to talk about period stigma as a women's issue is incorrect in the language used, because this assumption of period as womanhood has led to many transmasculine people, there's trans men or non-binary people who don't align with femininity, overlooking their own health, avoiding medical checkups because they trigger their dysphoria because of the language used around them, and therefore leaving potentially fatal conditions untreated until it's too late. This is also because the NHS, like other systems across the world, has a system for sending out reminders around having these health screenings that is based on your gender marker. So if you are marked as a woman, as your gender, you will receive these screening reminders. And some trans women even, or women who don't have periods, receive them, whereas people who are marked as men who do have periods don't receive them. So there is a very practical danger in the equation of being a woman and having periods, and having periods therefore being a woman. On the other hand, it is not wrong to say that period stigma has to do with misogyny. It's linked to misogyny. This is not something any trans person is advocating against. The assumption of periods equating to womanhood is a cause of period stigma, because anything that mostly happens to women is victim of misogyny. And furthermore, the equation of womanhood and biological function reduces womanhood to a biological phenomenon, which is extremely reductive of what the experience of being a woman is. And so this is like, the problem with this is bioessentialism, which is a complex long word that just means the belief that biology dictates gender. And bioessentialism harms everyone. It harms trans people, as I've said, but it also harms cis people because of this reduction of women to reproductive function. which once you stop thinking and you stop and think about it for a moment, it's immediately clearly misogynistic, because women don't exist in function of their reproductive ability. And furthermore, it harms a much more silenced community, which is that intersex community, which I'm gonna talk a bit about more later. Gender is non-binary, but neither is biological sex. Biological sex is not strictly binary either, because it's actually composed of a series of characteristics. So that includes chromosomes, it includes genitalia, it includes hormones, but it also includes secondary sex characteristics. And any mix of these in ways that don't fully match our idea of male or female happen very frequently in humans. Intersex people are currently accounted for as 1.7% of the population. Now, these might seem like a very low percentage, but you have to consider, first of all, that many intersex people aren't accounted for. There are drastic surgeries that are acted on children at birth to make them conform to a binary gender, and they may never know they actually were intersex. There is also a lot of debate within the intersex community as to what counts as intersex, with a lot of people arguing that, for example, conditions such as polycystic ovarian syndrome, which heavily affects hormonal levels, actually counts as an intersex condition, an intersex identity. And therefore, this number is probably much lower than the amount of intersex people that actually are out there. And even if it isn't, you know what else is 1.7% of the population? Redheads, people with red hair. So we don't say red hair doesn't exist or it's an abnormality. It's just a less frequent color of hair. Similarly, bodies that don't fully align with our identities, ideas of what male and female biology are normal. They're not medical conditions that need to be treated. Sometimes they can cause medical imbalances that need to be treated, but that isn't a one-to-one correspondence. So yeah, this is what I wanted to touch upon. I think I will speed run through this. But yeah, this is me. Trust no binary, because all binaries are made to divide us. They're made to make things look much more simple than they are. And when things look simple, they're probably because they benefit someone. And my answer is gonna be they benefit the patriarchy. So that's it. And thanks for listening. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Mars. That was really insightful and informative. Let me just check the chat function. Oh, Ola, no worries, that's fine. Yeah, I had a question actually. How do you, I mean, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a new area, but it's definitely one that people are learning more about these days. So when you kind of face something that you don't agree with, how do you deal with that situation? And what advice would you give to other people?
If I don't agree with someone with something, it's probably because there's some data that is lacking, whether from my part or their part. So I tend to see disagreements as less disagreements with a person and more as trying to figure out what the actual fact is, because I personally don't care about agreeing with people or disagreeing with people. I care about figuring out what's right. So when there's something that seems wrong, I look it up. When I know something is right and someone is saying is wrong, I think it's also important to know to stand your ground and know when and how to correct them, because that's also very important. And yeah, that's how I deal with disagreements.
I completely agree with you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I can absolutely share the slides.
Wonderful. I think this is going to be live on Facebook as well, right? So,
Yeah.
so there'll be like a copy of this whole event as well, if anyone wanted to see that. Wonderful. Okay. We will carry on to the next point. Mars, if you're still on, there's more questions later on. Maybe we can have a discussion all at the end. That would be great. Okay. So far we've had Farah and Mars come on to talk to us about, being at, well, they're Roehampton students and kind of the impact that they've had in their time here. But women at Roehampton have historically made an impact, So I just wanted to kind of spend some time looking at the history at Roehampton and talk about some significant people. I did try and do some research into finding out more about the alumni and the history of Roehampton, but actually those teams are on furlough at the moment, so it's kind of difficult to get my hands on any information, but I have tried my best, and I really felt it was important at Women's Conference to pay tribute to the people that have kind of paved the path for us. So I'll just start. So back in 1841 was when Whitelands College was founded as a teacher training college for women specifically. So Roehampton started off with women, that's where its roots were, and that's how, oh, sorry, it's just gone. Back to it. That's where Roehampton started. I should have just gone to the next one. So then I picked out a couple of significant figures, which I was going to share with you guys. So this is Esther Lawrence. Esther was appointed principal of Frobel College in 1901. She was significant because she fought for elementary school teachers to be recognised and respected. Under her leadership, Frobel kept its non-denominational approach, and she encouraged the formation of clubs and societies. Next, we have Sarah Walton. This was kind of particularly impactful for me when I read through this. Sarah graduated in 1995 with a joint honours degree in English literature and English language and linguistics. The reason her story was kind of high impact was because she suffered from a brain injury, leaving her unable to write. Obviously, having a degree in English literature and language, where does that even leave you suffering from brain injury? I work in a hospital, like my full-time job is working in a hospital with people who have brain injuries. So to read this was, oh my God, how does someone recover from that? But it didn't stop her. She came up with her own method of writing based purely on intuition. And she carried on working after that in the field of literature. So that is one incredible woman. This is Maggie Alfonsi. Am I saying that right? I'm not sure. Just hold on, I have some information which I wanted to pull up. So beyond study, Maggie embarked on a successful rugby career, becoming part of the English team who won in the 2014 World Cup in France. Sorry. There's one quote from her on the screen, but another one is also, my biggest achievements have been completing my undergraduate and postgraduate degrees. My rugby achievements have also been high up on my list of achievements, but completing my degrees has been significant for me. She is a very, I felt that it was very valuable. She's had many, many awards and overcome all sorts of barriers. So another significant lady in the history of Roehampton. was kind of surprised to find this out actually. Jacqueline Wilson was appointed the Chancellor of Roehampton in 2014. And actually, there was a scholarship established in her honour as an annual postgraduate scholarship based at the university as well. She's had significant impact shaping different parts of the university, especially in children's literature and creative writing. So a bit of a celebrity endorsement there. And actually, I would have liked to get Dr. Aisha Gill, but she's a very busy woman. Her work has had real significant impact. She's at the university right now, actually, in the criminology department. She's done significant work in honor killings research and received an ERSC award for outstanding impact in public policy. Her research has directly influenced new laws in the UK on forced marriage introduced in 2007 and 2014. So the point of raising these women and the kind of work that they've done is to show that we're in an institution that really values and respects the contribution women bring to the field, and to, you know, kind of be following from these ladies that have done so much is, I feel like, it really empowers me to feel that the work that I do here is impactful, and I'm going to be able to help carry on the work that other people have done. And I, you know, Mars and Farah coming along to speak about the work that they've done at Roehampton has been really insightful to hear how everyone's work is contributing. So we have another wonderful lady joining us, which is Danielle, to speak about Sport Roehampton and give us some of her knowledge. And so I will hand it over to you, Danielle.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here. This is my first year being involved in the Women's Conference, so I'm really grateful that you asked me to be a part of it. Yeah, I'm also speaking on behalf of Sport Roehampton today, so a lot of my information has come from them. So I'll just get started, really. Competing on your period, I mean, it's a bit of a myth, isn't it? Does it impact your performance? Being on your period has increased levels of estrogen, and it can be seen to impact your muscle contractions, your temperature regulation, and how you use the fuel in your body. 50 to 70% of female athletes have reported how their performance in their sport was impacted during their menstrual cycle. The symptoms associated with heavy bleeding during your period, like motivation, energy levels, pain, they're difficult to manage day to day, let alone when you're attempting to be at your peak performance. Competing on your period can cause an extreme internal battle for some athletes. I know it does for me. And when you compete, you move more, and therefore you feel like you're bleeding more because of your movements. And bleeding more leads to a higher possibility of leaks. So if you haven't realised, in the space of my sentence, you've changed your attention from performance to embarrassment and how to avoid it. A friend of mine expressed to me that she felt weak when she was having to ask for sanitary products before a game. She was the captain and thought she looked weak. So before she'd even stepped onto the court, she felt that she was at a disadvantage already. You got the frustration of unpredicted cycles, embarrassment of asking, and the assumptions of actions being based on emotions. Yet all we should see is just an athlete. This draws me to my next point of equity and equality. It's something that Farah touched on earlier about period poverty, and it's really important to recognise that everybody has started at some people have started at more advanced stages than others. Many may struggle with competing while menstruating, but some are equipped for this monthly occurrence with sanitary products. But some aren't as fortunate as that, and when they menstruate, they just straight up, they can't compete. And that's a real shame, that something that you essentially don't really have control over is put in your way, and you can't do much about it. It's always advised that these are personal approaches, you know, and everybody is different, and that you should listen to your body accordingly, because your body puts you through unbelievable things. And sometimes I scare myself a little bit when I lift weights and things like that. I think, wow, my body can do that. And you have to treat it like how you would want to treat somebody else. So moving on to perceptions of women in sport, this is a big one, especially for me as a female sport president. This is something I campaign for pretty much on a weekly basis, and I believe it's what my role was invented for. You know, This Girl Can and Women in Mind specifically target perceptions of women in sport. This Girl Can try to eradicate the perceptions that are seen by women in sport, and get rid of them and encourage other girls and women, and just to integrate into sport again. I have a few examples for this category that you may know of, or they might shock you a little bit. To be honest, they shocked me. I was writing them down, and you think, wow, that actually has happened. So my first example is of a CrossFit Games athlete. She went to the CrossFit Games. If you don't know what CrossFit Games are, they're a little bit like the Olympics, but for CrossFit. So people will train for a year. They're every year as well, not every 4 years. You train for the year, and then like elite athletes, they will try to peak when the CrossFit Games are. She went to event 1 and felt obviously a little bit funny during the event. I thought, that's a bit weird. I should be peaking at my performance here. After the event, goes to the toilet, she's come on her period. And then after that, she skyrocketed downwards. She spiraled downwards and didn't finish very well where she was expected to based on her talent. But her motivation and her levels of energy just skyrocketed after she had realised that she was on her period. She was then labelled as emotional. Now, that really sits hard with me, because I think anybody that holds their sport higher should be emotional. If you are an athlete, to you, your sport, that is you. It's what makes you. It's part of your identity. So you're going to get emotional about it. And this comes back to how women are just they're just expected to compete at a high level, regardless of the circumstances. Her male counterparts would go on to compete for the rest of the week and would probably have nothing other than injuries to think about. And it was a real shame to see essentially her not getting her own head about it, but that was one of the main reasons why she didn't compete very well. Now, the next one I go on to, I hold closely to me because I play rugby. Recently, there's been a campaign called #ICare. I don't know if you've seen it. It was put on by Rugged RFC on Instagram. A lot of people have this perception that, why do we care about women's rugby? No one cares about the ladies, the men play and the women play afterwards and everybody leaves. Why do we care about watching the women's rugby? This year, the men got to compete in their Six Nations final for the whole. It was postponed and then it's just taken place. Now, the Women's Rugby World Cup was postponed altogether. It's rugby. I don't see a justification for you to say it's due to the coronavirus when the men's games can take place. There's 2.7 million women that play rugby globally. Now, we're not just talking about a handful here, we're talking about 2.7 million women. And when you put that into perspective, that if every woman that played rugby brought a friend along to a session, there's a lot of angry people that want to play their sport that aren't being allowed to. It's restricted by amateurism. So a lot of our Roses, that's the women's England rugby team, a lot of those that play for our country still have full-time jobs. A lot of them are they work for the NHS. A lot of them are firefighters, police women. They have hard jobs as it is, yet they are expected to go and represent our country while doing a full-time job, whereas their male counterparts are just allowed to play it full-time. They're professional, that's their full job, they get the pay accordingly, and they get to play whenever they like. Now, the next point I go on to is also close to my heart. I play a lot of sports, if you haven't guessed. this is about golf. This was something that recently happened in the news. Obviously, if you don't play golf, you won't have heard about it because it doesn't come up often. It's the sexualization of women in golf, actually. There was a female golfer on the ladies' pro tour. Female golfing attire is usually a skirt, and if it's a skirt, it's got shorts underneath it. She went to bend over to get her ball from a hole, and a male commentator said that he could see her panties. Now, they weren't panties, they were shorts. And you've just sexualized an item of clothing that is a sport item of clothing to enable her to perform well. And that's not what golf is about. Why was she referred to as a pair of panties rather than somebody that's just come first in the ladies pro-am? That's disgusting to be seen as. And then she was then later referred to in a podcast as the lady showing her panties. And then it leads on to this discussion of, well, why, if you didn't want somebody to see them, why would you wear them? And I hate that comment with a passion. It really, really angers me, because she was wearing what was comfortable for her to compete. And that's another perception of women, is that we wear specific sport clothes or athleisure to appease the eye rather than what's comfortable for you. My next point is about personal growth and development. So being very heavily involved in sport my entire life, I am who I am today because of the amount of sport I have participated in, and I'm so grateful to have been provided such opportunities. Social and competitive activities, they're just more than fun for student athletes. I recently attended a Bucks Female Leaders in Sport and Business webinar, and they did stress the benefits of competing in sport post-degree. As a woman, there are many barriers we all come across, whether they be perceived or reality. These can be overcome by taking responsibility for your own career by seeking out opportunities. From each opportunity, take the skills you learn and then transfer them into the role you are now applying for. Those experiences become stories. You should use those in interviews, showing your personality. It makes you more memorable, more unique to the employer. I love telling stories, and using my own experiences in interviews or just in general, just discussing the how you come about that. How was you in that instance? And then you have graduate employability. So they discussed how student athletes were more employable than their non-athletic counterparts. Sports participation, that they gained higher percentage of first and 2-1 classifications. Exercise helps with stress, it boosts your health. To me, it's a massive escape. That's exactly how I've used it at university, and I know everybody needs some form of escape while at uni. There's low to no cost while you're at university. It's cheaper than the cost outside of university if you were to continue sport. There are free social programs. You have the possibility of gaining paid qualifications or even work experience that, especially for me, I was able to obtain my level 2 rugby coaching qualification, which I wouldn't have done had I not participated at university, because I wouldn't have got that opportunity elsewhere. It just generally helps your uni experience. You get more chances to meet new people and socialize. If I ever meet a first year, that is my first piece of advice, is join a society, join a sport team, because that is where you will meet the most people as fast as you can, and you will, especially if you are a sporty person, it's something that you will find like-minded people at. Students who compete at university alongside their studies express how their mental health was almost given a breakthrough sport and exercise. Like I said earlier, it's an escape, and that makes you unique. Whatever tool you use in escape is unique to you. If you use it for creativity, or it could be cooking, for example. I'm not very good at it, but if you're good at it, then tell me and I'll ask for some brownies. The most important thing for female students watching this is to remember that you should never shy away from telling your story. I was recently told that, and it was something that I had never liked to experience before. I know I'm talking a lot here, but something I really struggle with is talking about myself to other people. I feel like you hear yourself more and you think, oh, just shut up, stop talking. I know no one wants to hear that, but yes, that is exactly what people need to hear. They need to hear your story. It's exactly what the world needs to hear. You have individual skills and experiences, and like I said, that makes you you. Remember that you are not expected to know everything, and you are always adapting. I was also recently told to trust the process, which is something so funny that you can compare to everything. But you know, just allow yourself to trust the process, and don't always wait to ask permission, because you're always adapting. And if you want to do something, like I said earlier, take your initiative. It's your career, it's your responsibility. By taking responsibility for your career and seeking out opportunities, the options and choices you make down the line will become clear, and they'll become coherent with the lifestyle that you want.
Hi Danielle, thank you so much for that. You did a fantastic job, and you have been doing so much work around telling people's stories and your own stories. I was going to ask you, like, you know, you've been involved in the Women in Mind campaign as well. What other work have you been up to at the moment?
I've been up to a lot, I won't lie. With the Women in Mind, I'm currently doing the Couch to 5K. I'm trying to raise some money for an amazing charity called the Wellbeing of Women. They look into investing money into research for gynecological cancers, pregnancy and birthing defects, and just the general impact on women's health. So I'm doing that at the moment. I've only got 4 runs left, which I'm really excited about. I've also done a few, I've done a Q&A live discussing periods in sport that you were kindly a part of. And we're also releasing a periods article discussing the menstrual cycle and you know, how that will impact your fitness. And just it's mainly a book, I guess. It's not a physical book, but an article of students' experiences, and not just in sport, it's also in exercise. You don't have to be a student athlete to have experienced that. And I think that's something important to remember, that you don't have to be heavily competitive to experience what I've spoken about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're juggling so much with your studies, and we have an entire conversation about how you're doing that. But you're doing great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to, I don't know if that's right, if anybody else can see Julia's comment in the chat. I'll just read it. It says, I think an interesting issue in sport is clothing. I've trained volleyball and beach volleyball for many years, and clothing regulations was a very stressful thing for me when I was younger. I used to wear my loose shorts when on my period, and there were situations when I got disqualified from the match because the regulation forced women to wear tight shorts while competing. I can completely resonate with that when I used to dance as well, with leotards, and you'd constantly be told, do not touch your leotard, or it'd be like, don't pull a wedgie out, don't touch it, stop touching your leotard. And that I used to that used to make me feel uncomfortable, because as soon as you go to touch anything, the attention is drawn to you straight away. And just to touch on what Julia said, she said about being disqualified and losing, and I don't see how an item of clothing can prevent you from performing to your best. It shouldn't at all, especially even in the CrossFit world. A lot of female CrossFitters get absolutely abused for it, the fact that they barely wear anything. And I was a little bit odd, like I'm thinking it was a little bit odd to barely wear anything when you work out, because you'd feel really uncomfortable. And then I started doing it and realized how hot you get, and it's not until you do it yourself that you realize, actually, I now understand. You do, that sounds quite funny to say, but it's such a hard sport to do that you really do like have to wear the bare minimum, because you're pushing your body to a point where you're sweating from literally the backs of your legs. Like you're sweating from everywhere, and it's like, if you ever get wet and you've got clothes on, like if you step in a puddle when you've got socks on, it's kind of like that. But that cannot prevent you from not performing. It just cannot. She's also said that it was especially irritating because the men's volleyball could wear loose shorts and it's not a problem. That is a very, very good point that I will always compare. When I touched on golf earlier, the men can wear shorts and the men can wear trousers, but any kind of clothing sold for women for those type of sports are extremely short. And when they're not available to you, unless you make them yourself and you are, you know, on the Great British Sewing Bee or something like that, then how can you compete with that? And you know, if they can do it, why can't I? And the song, what's the song where it's like, I can do anything better than you?
I think the line is everything you can do, I can do bleeding. I've come across that one a couple of times.
Yeah, exactly. And Julia's exactly right. You know, when you're younger, it's so stressful, and like I said earlier, you that's what you think about. You constantly think about that. I've been in really stressful games for basketball where I've been on my period, and that's all you can think about is that, oh my god, everybody's looking at me, they all know that I'm on my period, they can just tell by the way my shorts are sitting, or they can just tell, and you think that then makes you think about that rather than thinking about the game that you're playing, and then that's when your performance starts to deteriorate sorry. And then you know you get frustrated with yourself for letting that happen. So I think it needs to be spoken about, and I do think that rules and regulations should change. I don't think that you should be disqualified for the fact that you have a top that makes you feel comfortable. I think actually you should be congratulated for wearing something like that still allows you to show your performance and your talent, for sure.
Definitely. I remember seeing a campaign years ago actually, and it was like a guy, and he has a shirt that was like unbuttoned, and he was, you know, looking all fly and everything, and it's like the campaign was hinting at, would it be okay to assault this kind of person because they're inviting that kind of attention? No, it's just that thought wouldn't even enter your mind. But when it's a woman, it's a woman's fault because of the kind of clothes she wears, or you know, she's inviting that kind of attention. It's ridiculous. And I think the thing that we need to do is really be able to talk about it and call it out and call out these kind of behaviors, which is what, I think we're all here, we're all doing the right thing, but we just need to keep doing it, and we need to get louder and louder.
Yeah, I really like what Aurela's put in the chat as well. She said the I don't mind reading, so bad. That's the one, of trans women in sports on an international stage has been so disappointing to see, especially when it's based on
arbitrary.
There you go. Things like hormone levels rather than scientific studies. That's a very good point, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel really bad. I don't know her name. I have a book. This is a lie. It's right here. This might be what you're referring to. She competed. I believe it was Berlin 2009 actually, and it was about sex testing, and everybody was very, very worried that yes, there we go. Thank you. That she had a lot more testosterone, than her other female counterparts that she was competing against. And at the end, I always think that you wouldn't ask Usain Bolt to give everybody else a head start because he runs really fast. And I think that the Olympics kind of is a showcase of hard work and talent. And if she has a lot of talent, then you cannot oppress that just because of her nature. I don't think that is fair in any way, shape or form. The book is called Sex Testing, Gender Policing in Women's Sports by Lindsay Piper, and it is, I've wrote it for my dissertation, but it's a very, very good book, and it explains how trans women are perceived in the categories that they put our athletes into in order to compete. And like I said, you wouldn't ask Usain Bolt to literally give everybody a 5-second head start just so that everybody could be equal in the race. That's why you have a podium, essentially. And just because she won, they thought that they would do some sex testing. And I do believe that they did ask her to take testosterone blockers, I believe, which I think is awful, just because she has more testosterone than other people. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Oren.
I didn't know that she was asked to be take blockers, but I think that's very interesting when it comes to the broader conversation about like the panic around trans people and how recently there's been a movement of TERFs advocating for children not being allowed to go on testosterone on hormone blockers because it will be quote unquote irreversible damage and mutilation, which is an absolutely ridiculous claim because first of all, hormone blockers are reversible and they are only prescribed after the child has expressed their desire to go on said blockers when they're about to approach puberty. So this is already a child who is aware of gender and gender identity and what they need. And again, it's completely reversible. So then for the same kind of bioessentialist attempts to then force a woman to go on blockers really shows how this attempt at policing women's body, like this attempt of policing trans women's body, is really a gateway to a broader attempt at policing women's body in general and what is a woman based on biological features, which is going to harm everyone, not just trans people.
Yeah, that's such a great point. You saying about policing women, especially in sport, is such a great point to hit on. It feels like everybody's always answering to somebody else, rather than just doing it because you love it. You love sport. I love running. I love doing those things, but I feel like I'm constantly having to answer to somebody else that is monitoring that and trying to make it that broad system. Have we missed something in the chat?
Oh no,
I know she was just saying thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for letting me speak, and thank you, Mars, for commenting on that. It's so great to always hear someone else's side of the story and just constantly educating yourself. No matter how old you get, you always learn. And I love that. A friend of mine recently said, aren't you worried about leaving uni, like when the learning stops? Because I've always been learning, and I just don't think you ever stop learning, and I don't think you should ever not be open to educating yourself and learning. So thank you so much for letting me be involved today, and I've really learned a lot that I didn't know before from listening to my colleagues. So thank you so much. Again, if you have any other questions, just hit me up, and if you think of something I maybe don't know, then please get in touch, because like I said, I love learning.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Danielle. It's amazing to have this conversation today. Okay, if anyone's got any questions, you can put in the chat. I will go on to the next slide. So, I mean, the point of everyone coming along to have these conversations today is really to work towards a future where we're eradicating all of the taboos and stigma attached to conversations around women. And I mean, it's a topic that's been kind of prominent today, is talking about periods, and periods not being a barrier, and being a woman is not a barrier. I kind of had this thought myself. The stories that we carry with us are not baggage, they're experiences, and it has taken a long time for me to learn this myself. I've definitely had like an up and down life getting to the point that I'm at right now, and I always thought of my experiences as baggage, but now I kind of feel like I've liberated myself to think, you know, I've learned so much from everything that's happened to me to get to this point. And you know, at my age, I'm finally starting to learn that, you know, I can appreciate that I am a woman and I enjoy being the way I am, and this is me and this is all of me, and I take that to, you know, any job or any part of my life. I enjoy that, and I hope that everyone else can as well. So kind of one of the main things that I've been working with, to go back to Maria at the beginning and working with her company, it's all really about educating yourself about your cycle. Now I don't know, maybe a lot of you are like me, or maybe you're way more advanced than me, but being a woman, you kind of get your period once a month, and that's, you know, as far as you go. You know that it's kind of a crappy week. You're just going to kind of leave it at that and try and get through it, and then, you know, carry on. But sorry, I'm just going to move something. God, I wish this was face to face. Okay, so the social and political landscapes have led menstruation to be perceived as negatively, obviously, you know that. But what your cycle is a conversation that your body is trying to have with you, and it's really not working against you. You can make it work with you, which is something that I've been doing over the last couple of months. So kind of to start educating myself about menstruation and the landscape of where it comes from and where we're heading and kind of how you experience it. I read these 3 books myself. This is the reason why these 3 books are on the screen right now. It's About Bloody Time period is a kind of a funny take on addressing the topic of periods. I would recommend it. It was a fun, easy read. So a good starting point. Period Power is kind of learning about your body, about being a woman. It's one I'd definitely recommend in terms of identifying things in your cycle that aren't working for you. They also talk about being trans and menstruation. So there's some really key topics that are touched on. So I would highly recommend that book as well. And It's Only Blood is talking about the kind of global picture of period poverty and stories from around the world, and more of a political take. But all 3 books were really, you know, if you ever feel like reading about periods, I would recommend them. And they're a good starting point to start figuring out what is the conversation going on around periods. Now, for yourselves, you know, if you're not gonna pick up a book and you're like, oh, that's too much, where the hell do I start if I just want to do something simple? A really simple thing that you can do today is start tracking your moods throughout your cycle. And you can do this, you know, whichever gender you are. It doesn't have, it's kind of just to get in touch with your body and learn what your body is doing. Now, I started doing this a couple of months ago, and to give you an idea, like my own story of what I found, I used to get a lot of headaches, and I couldn't work out why. I genuinely, you know, between headaches and mood swings, I went to my doctor and I was like, there's definitely something wrong with me. I'm bipolar or something, you know, something's not going right here. And the doctor, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever gone to your doctor with mood related things. The first thing they do is want to prescribe you antidepressants. And that's happened to me, you know, like a couple of different points in my life. But then when I started doing the cycle tracking, actually I was kind of able to identify 2 different points in my cycle where I had the same headaches, and I knew I had the mood fluctuations coming. So in a way, I started to learn what was happening to me at different points in my cycle. And then I was able to adapt my kind of work routine and family routine and even social routine to my cycle. So I know that I'm not going to go out if I've got a change in my cycle coming up, or I'm going to plan certain bits of work that work better in different parts. Like I'll make my cycle work for me. So, you know, you could go as hard as you want or as easy as you want. You can keep it simple and just color in what days are good days and what days are bad days, and you'll start to identify trends, and then it will make sense, and you'll feel more in control of who you are. So I would highly recommend it. Kind of a little bit of what I'm doing. This is the Sisterhood Journal. I'll hold it out to the camera. Actually, on the Hood's website, there's a special code at the moment. If anyone was thinking of starting to journal, I'll put the code, the discount code on the chat actually. It's Hood IWD for International Women's Day. So if I'll put it up at the end, but if you wanted to start, I mean, there's a free download on the website, so you can just literally print it out if you want, or if you wanted to go in a bit harder and start something for yourself, then there is the journal there as well. Okay, well, that's kind of rounding up International Women's Day, but kind of to talk to you a bit about RSU and elections. Elections are open, guys, so I would highly recommend putting yourself forward. My position, Gender Equality Officer, is open, and it's really been so exciting. I came into this role a couple of months ago because it was still open, and I threw myself into it so hard, and here I am putting this conference together, and it's been so much fun. I've met so many people across the university. It has been really insightful to meet people from all different kinds of backgrounds, and kind of a networking opportunity. You know, I hope that I keep in touch with all of you guys and see where our futures lead us, and who knows, we'll collaborate again on another women's conference somewhere else at another company. So it's really exciting stuff. So I would really say put yourself forward, throw yourself in the deep end. You know, what was it? Maria was talking about stretching yourself, you know, in the stretch zone. So if you're interested, really, I would recommend talking to the RSU. There are also other events going on to do with International Women's Day. So obviously, this was the International Women's Conference, and these aren't all the events. There are definitely more on the Roehampton blog, which the link is here, which is not a short link, so just maybe take a picture of it. But there's more events going on, so if you're interested, please come along, get involved. You know, we would love for you to get involved and learn something new and throw yourself into another environment. It's a lot of fun. I've certainly enjoyed it. And also there's hashtags if you wish to, you know, share your own journeys of what you guys have been up to. We would love to hear about it. So there's the Choose to Challenge hashtag, International Women's Day, and Women in Mind, the Women in Mind campaign with the RSU, with Nicolo heading that. So there's a lot of work in that sphere going on. I'm on Instagram. My name is The Story of My Cycle, where I share bits and bobs to do with being the Gender Equality Officer. It is a new Instagram, so be nice. But it's been fantastic, and I have really enjoyed all of this. So thank you so much for everyone who came along. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you've been able to take something away from it. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stick around. But if you're not, have a lovely afternoon and take care. Thank you so much.
Well done, Sabiha.
Well done.
You've got a lot of thank yous in the chat.
Well, I should put H